needing everything to be perfect. I've done a video on this beforehand, but it genuinely is one of the most debilitating parts of having a disorder. Whether it was the temperature, the environment, the people I was with, the thing I was watching, the texture, the measurement, the portioning, everything had to be perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, I lost it. If the time I was eating out was not the ones that my anorexia was happy with, it was like the end of the world. This requirement for perfection caused so many rifts within my family. It was impossible to live with me. Funnily enough, life is not perfect. You can't control the supermarket stock. Sometimes you are going to overcook things. The measuring situation, I can't even go there. Any excuse not to eat, that's what my disorder would find. My entire life was spent thinking about food. Everything felt so like high risk. I was just living in a state of such high stakes. When it went wrong, I didn't have any coping mechanisms. My coping mechanism for everything in my life was food. So the one thing that I could control, which was actually controlling me, was food. And when that went wrong, it felt like there was nothing in this world that was safe. My whole life, my whole worth, everything about me was what was on the plate in front of me. That's why it meant so much. I had no identity anymore apart from the eating disorder. So everything that I was eating was almost a reflection on my own worth. I don't know if this makes sense, but I guess the mix of anxiety and the fact that I was literally identityless and all of my worth was poured into how good I could be at anorexia. When things went wrong, the house was not a pleasant place to be. A huge part of my recovery was doing the deep work and learning that I did not need to be perfect. Life is not perfect. Perfection, frankly, doesn't exist. Plus, it has nothing to do with your worth as a human. Since being fully recovered, I'm able to just live life imperfectly. I don't need everything to be perfect. I don't need a perfect job. I don't need a perfect house. I don't need perfect clothing, a perfect personality. And all of that deeper work started with being imperfect with food. When I started to challenge that need for perfection and I started to just embrace when things were overcooked, embrace when stuff was burned, not worry if the TV channel wasn't on the right thing. I know it sounds crazy, but genuinely that like filtered into the rest of my life. I had ridiculously high standards for myself before anorexia, throughout anorexia, and due to recovery, I was able to actually address that serious problem. Those so-called standards were stifling my life, whether it was how I was perceived by the world or what was on my plate. I think high standards are quite common when it comes to eating disorders. I think maybe that's due to the external validation and the feeling of insecurity within oneself. When you have self-security, you know that you're safe within yourself. So when things outside of your control go wrong, which actually everything in life is meant to be anyways, you're not rocked because your sense of self is so strong. And that's why the deep work counts. Pretty much all of life was lived outside of those standards. You can live very imperfectly, very happily. So it might start with food, challenging the perfection around food. However, that will translate into the rest of your life. And that's what makes your recovery resilient, but also your life so much more fulfilling.